firstly, I would like to, as I say, welcome all our viewers that are attending, as I say, this webinar today. I have with me a couple of colleagues. This particular webinar is one of a series of webinars we're doing on testing. This particular one just happens to be about risk management in general. So a very brief intro on this. So what's the riskiest thing you think about in software development? Well, in most cases, it's actually missing the risks entirely. So every software project and product comes with risks, but too often, most teams don't even see them coming until it's too late. According to one study, around about 60% of software failures could have been avoided with early risk detection. This is exactly what this webinar is about today. How to uncover those software risks before they actually impact your delivery or timeline. Yeah. So we've broken this down into a series of topics that we'll cover off as we go through. So first, we're going to look at risk identification and assessment. Following on from that, we will look at risk mitigation strategies, what to avoid, and how to maybe transfer the risks or even accept them. So after that, we'll look at ongoing risk management. How does that work? And as I say, how do the teams get involved? So after that, we'll touch on, real life examples on what's happened, what's gone well, what's not gone so well. And then finally, we'll look at risk-based testing on how to make, your test planning a little smarter. So without further ado, today I've got two colleagues with me. We've got Igor Kovalenko, a QA lead at TestFort. And in addition to that, we have Katrina Antonova, a senior QA and mentor within TestFort as well. So I am Bruce Mason. I will be facilitating this webinar today. So let's make a start. One little key point that's just come to mind, if we've got any questions, if you could please put them in the comments section, and then we will cover them off at the end once we've had chance to go through those. Now, that way it will flow a little better, and we can actually get through all the content and answer all the questions at the end. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's make a start. Right, Igor, why is it important to do risk identification as early as possible on a project or product?
Okay, that's a very good question that we should ask for ourselves before starting creating of a product or starting a project, because as we like to say, early identification equal proactive response. So if we before starting discovered risk, so we did it early. It have possibility to give team time to analyze the impact of risk, to choose mitigation strategy, and to allocate resources and time buffers. And it's very helpful because it provides avoiding something like the firefighting mode later in the life cycle, and prevents risk snowballing. For example, if we start working on any e-commerce platform with third-party API. For example, if we early discovered overstatable such third-party API, it could help us to switch vendor before codependency created.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on there. Katrina, is there anything else you'd like to add in this particular area?
No, I'm totally agree with Igor. Very nice example.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, who would we consider as being key stakeholders that would be involved in risk assessments?
So basically, everyone who is responsible for a project should be a stakeholder for participating in risk management and risk assessment sessions. Basically, it can be team leaders like dev leaders, QA leaders, product owners for sure, business analysts, project managers, as well as C-level management and sometimes clients. So basically, all these people should be participating and are responsible for risk assessment.
Okay, I definitely agree. It's important to have people from the client there. That way, you get buy-in from them as part of the work that's actually being done. CTO is probably a pretty key individual from my perspective on a client-based side to ensure that they are considering everything from security and from a technical perspective on behalf of their organization. It's kind of like someone that's going to sign off on that corresponding work. Igor, any additional thoughts from you as part of that?
Yeah, in addition, it's about vendor representatives, as I already
Hmm.
mentioned in the
Yeah.
previous question, because, for example, if we work in collaboration with vendors, and it
Hmm.
should be better to communicate with them before release and make sure that on their site they have a risk assessment too. And it should be discussed with our team, and all stakeholders and decision makers should discuss it before. Because, for example, if our inner team already done risk assessment and we make a release and influence could be from third party side, it could be a very big problem that
Good point.
we did not prevent before.
Okay. Let's talk about risk identification on a little bit of a lower level. What kind of methods or sources and tools would you use for, say, identifying all the risks that you need either for a project again or a product? Obviously, it's worthwhile discussing as well the difference between those two. But let's talk about, as I say, those particular points first: the methods, the sources, and maybe the tools. Who would like to cover that one off to start with? Katerina, how about you?
Yeah, sure. There are different risk identification techniques that are widely used. For example, it's brainstorming. I highlighted it first because I think it's the most widely used and it's not that formal as other techniques. That's why it's easier to implement it within your development lifecycle. Also, it can be expert interviews, it's historical data analysis,
Hmm.
but this technique works if you already have your risk assessment on your project or within your company. It can be SWOT analysis and it can be risk checklists.
Okay.
So basically, brainstorming is the most informal and, from my perspective, the most beneficial technique.
Okay. All right. Igor, any additional points there?
Some opinions about this. First of all, we should think about creation of risk culture.
Hmm.
So if we, at the beginning of any project or creation of the product, we create foundation of it, it will be better than we will do it when we mitigate the risk that already happened. And if you talk about different um, methodology of life cycle, it could agile or could waterfall, depends on. For example, if you talk about agile, we should mm, think about risk every hour meeting, so discuss it, what could
It's
happen
important.
or
Yeah.
what already happened. And if you talk about waterfall, it should be put between, for example, design stage and before testing, because if we uh, will wait before testing stage, it could be very difficult to back up for
Hmm.
this process. And as Katerina said, yes, brainstorm is very good thing.
Okay.
And also we should think about historical data that already happened. And by the way, we have a lot of different approach for risk assessment. It's not part of today's webinar, but if one interested, you could read about it because different types is about estimation. So it depends on project needs and your experience.
If some of our viewers are interested in that at a lower level, they can either ping that in our comments, or when the video is uploaded, ask us a question. We're always here, to discuss. Okay, let's dive in a little lower on risk evaluation. There are a series of ways that you can look at that with regards to the data. How would we go about that for some of maybe the people that have not necessarily done it? Igor, do you want to start on this one? Yeah.
If you talk about risk evaluation, first of all, we should set up criteria of evaluation. So, for example, what should we evaluate? So it could be likelihood, or, for example, severity of risk
Yes.
to set grades of it. For example, from low to high of critical, and except of this, we should think about assignee of any kinds of risk. For example, if we talk about stakeholders of risk, each department should has own potential risk, and our risk that could be happened or already happened should ASAP will be assigned to these stakeholders, and we should use any tool, for example, any dashboard, for example, in Jira, yeah, and see progress of risk life in the real state, and update it, and each of stakeholders should see it and understand what's going on, and if it is possible to mitigate to prevent it, for example, or we need to mitigate this risk. And of course, we should have such documents as mitigation plan that we.
Well, I think we'll come on to that in a little bit with regard to mitigation strategies. That's fine. Just to cover that a little bit more. So, implementing something like a risk matrix. So the likelihood of a risk happening versus the potential impact, and grading that. So as you said, low, medium, and high. And then obviously, if it's got a high impact and a high likelihood, then those are obviously your critical risks that you've obviously got to manage. Where if something's got a low impact and a low likelihood, it's not something you really need to worry about too much. Yeah. So that type of thing. So people can, assess which ones are the ones that are more likely to actually physically occur, and defining, as I say, the severity and the probability. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on to our next particular area. So risk mitigation strategies that Igor has already started to broach. Let's bring Katerina back in on this one. So what are the best ways to mitigate risks on projects or products?
So basically, there are a few mitigation techniques. One is risk avoidance. It's a strategy when you just try to totally avoid and have a workaround of the risk. Then risk reduction, when you just try different measures to make its level lower, so it's not that impactful, or it's not that likely to happen. Another one is risk transfer. If we have, for example, as it was in the example some time ago about vendors or about third party, we might be able to transfer the risk to them, and they will mitigate it from their side. And risk acceptance. If the risk level is pretty low, we can just accept it because it won't harm us a lot. Yes, and so basically these are four major risk mitigation techniques. There is one more than Igor a little bit touched. It's contingency planning. It's for like more safety critical projects and projects with a lot of risk leveled severe and high. So basically, yeah, that's
That covers that.
all of them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to, as say, our next topic, which is once you've obviously identified all the corresponding risks, as say, you then need to obviously manage them. So risk management. What are the best ways to manage risks on going through a project or product? Igor, let's come back to you for this one.
Yeah, if you talk about risk that already happened, right?
No, this is
Oh,
how you manage the risks through either a
mm,
project or product. So, what
mhm,
is the
okay.
best way to do that? Yeah.
The best way to accept that the risk could happen, to put these kinds of risk to the corresponding documents that we already discussed. Yeah? For example, for mitigation plan, to have assignment of this risk and uh, move this risk, potential risk, to the corresponding department and to analyze um, what's the probability or likelihood of this risk, and um, um, to communicate in team, um, for example, on what stage we have the product, for example, and what uh, was thinking about the next steps and what issues could be. For example, if we talk about mm, quality assurance doing activities, yes, and quality assurance engineer could suggest what key features should we test more in detail, for example, or for example, what activities could we do to prevent such risk. And of course, it should be on the um, on the similar dashboard, for example, in Jira or any project management
Think we're maybe getting a
system.
little off topic on those ones. I think it's more in and around, as I say, about obviously the communication to ensure that, as I say, the people that are going to be reviewing the risks on an ongoing basis do review those. So maybe project team, or as I say, if a risk owner is a client, then obviously engaging with them on a regular basis. But ongoing, I say, reviews of the risk, maybe daily, weekly, monthly, dependent on the frequency required for each risk, is kind of a little bit more where we're going with regards to that, to ensure that the risks are being actually physically monitored. A key point to remember, I think, on any project or product is risk management is everybody's responsibility. It's not just a project managers or a product managers. Yeah, everybody is responsible for risks to ensure that they are being reviewed regularly. And if a new one comes up or a risk becomes an issue, God forbid, then as I say, that it gets escalated. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
basically, every risk should have an assignee, and of course, some action points that should be done to implement the mitigation techniques that was selected for the risk. Basically, when we have this in place, we need to review the risk level after some mitigation activities were done. For example, if it's about testing, that the risky part of the product was tested and we found bugs or we haven't found bugs, and after that we can re-estimate, re-evaluate our risk.
Yeah.
So Yeah, for sure we need to track the risk until the post mitigation activity reevaluation, where we can just estimate how well we mitigated, and let's say risk became low level from high level, so now we can accept it. So we are just doing same procedure and we are evaluating the risk.
Or if you get past a particular point, it may just become obsolete and you can sign it off and say no longer risk anymore. Yes. Yeah.
And some new risks can also happen.
That's why you need to constantly review. I completely agree. Yes. And that's why you need all of the team to consider, because, yeah, all of a sudden a new risk may come up and it needs to be added and go through the same rigorous process to review again, assign an owner, and for it to be monitored by the entire team. Yeah, it's a good point. Risks can come up partway through a project all of a sudden. So yes, that's a fair point. Talking of which, as I say, what do you suggest to do if a risk becomes an issue on a project? Igor, let's come back to you on this one. Yeah.
Okay, so if it happened already, yeah, um, so we should escalate it immediately. So we should notify decision maker and stakeholders, so our owners of this risk. Of course, we need to activate our contingency plan if we have, of course, and to log this risk as issue and update its status in the risk register, for example, to understand what the severity and priority to fix this risk should be, and communication. So we need to communicate with all our stakeholders to move on this risk further before it fixes. And of course, it should be focused on collaboration, transparency, and solution at the end.
The only thing I would add there just slightly is if a risk becomes an issue, then obviously, as you mentioned, the key stakeholders are aware of the situation. What should happen is that someone, you talked about contingency plan, completely agree, but there needs to be more emphasis, obviously, on that particular risk until it's mitigated. Again, normally in project management terms, being an XPM, we talk about risk, we talk about an exception plan to get us back on track. Yeah. So in this particular instance, I would look at, so, okay, so we are at one point, we need to get back here where the risk is not a problem anymore. So how will we get from A to B? You know, what is our mitigation strategy? We talked about the contingency, but we need to present that in a way to the team and the stakeholders that they buy in again to ensure that we're in sync. Yeah, to close that out and the risk goes away. Yeah. So mitigation strategies are fine for risks, but then when you actually, it turns into an issue, you need a contingency plan or an exception plan, whatever you want to call it, to close it out. So, okay. Extending on from that one, when we do release management between environments, what risks should be considered? Let's keep it at a high level because we're not here to talk about release management in very low level detail. So, Katarina, what are your thoughts on that one?
Depends on the environments, I would say, but basically, if we are moving something like, for example, our code base from one environment to another, we need to consider risk of the infrastructure of those environments. It's the most it's the highest risk from my perspective, I would say, because different configurations might uncover like very different bugs and very different issues from this perspective. Also, it can be some setup of the features or upgrade issues. For example, if the environment had lower version and we upgrading with the newer version, then some of, so to say, data that already contained on the environment, it can just be corrupted, or it can be not useful anymore. It depends really on the environment and the and how we move all the things from environment to environment. So basically, it's, from my perspective, it's two major things to, from the risk perspective, to worry about. Maybe, Igor, you have something else in mind?
You thought about this point very interesting, but what I could to add, for example, if we have release go checklist that could include reviews, we could use this checklist because it's very clear and understandable what should we do. Depends on environment, of course, and what should we skip, for example. And of course, a good habit to involve all stakeholders in accepting residual risk if the release proceeds with known issues, because it could be helpful, because each owner could have his or her own experience and opinion to help in it too.
Okay. From my perspective, again, stick my ex-project management hat on this one. I would argue that, yeah, whilst you could argue a release from development into the first testing environment is not as important as doing a release from, as I say, pre-production into live, but each release should be replicable. And as such, if you have no issues on the previous environment, technically you should have no issues, and say when you do the live environment, which is obviously the most important environment where you don't want to see any issues. So from my perspective, they are each important in their own way. I do like the idea of a checklist. Again, as a project manager, I like my checklists. The key point there is, again, it's replicable. If you do it a checklist for each environment, then, as I say, you're validating that everything is exactly the same. And as I say, release implementation is all about everything being replicable, because if it is replicable, then you're less likely to see issues, which obviously is what we don't want for any kind of release. So good points, guys. Good points on these particular areas. So thank you for your thoughts on those. Okay, let's move on to our next particular area. Uh, let's touch briefly on this, maybe in a little lower level. Roles and responsibilities for release management. We've talked about, obviously, risk owners. That's a particular one. What other, as I say, roles and responsibilities have we got in and around, as I say, risk management, guys? Who would like to pick this one up? Maybe Katerina?
For sure. If we're talking about release management and we do not have
Let's just talk about it in general, as I say, rather than about release management. Yeah.
If we do not have a dedicated person who is responsible for that, then actually, again, the whole team is responsible for delivering the right and verified project to the client. Of course, like the last, I would say, line of this chain is quality assurance, because they are mainly working on the testing of the product or project. And of course, sometimes it seems that quality assurance is only responsible for releasing the correct product to customers, but no, actually it's the whole team, development, product team, project management. They are all responsible for releasing the right project, as well as clients who are working on requirements to this project. So basically, we need to have all of these people in place to give some, I would say, green light or red light for pushing the uh, version to public, to production.
Okay, all right. Igor, thoughts from your side on this one?
Totally agree with Katerina, so nothing to add.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, I love this next topic matter. Okay, so case studies and examples. So in this particular instance, you need to think about positives and negatives. So let's start with a positive. It's always good to be positive on projects. So what's a good example that you have seen before in past of good risk management on projects that you've worked on? So Igor, let's come to you for that one first.
A good example.
Of how it worked well.
Okay, I remember one fintech startup that identified a high risk of regulatory change during the
Hmm.
discovery phase, and what we done, we created a regulatory change alert system to identify it. To head of a direct development team for critical compliance updates, and as a result, we had possibility to maintain compliance with no service disruption. So it was very useful because we prevent this risk. We investigate it, and we prevent risk with compliance changes, and we save our time, our money. Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, doing things right the first time. Yeah, I completely agree. Katrina, any examples of good risk say management from you?
Well, actually, good risk management is when we only have some um, minor things coming on the release. And I think in this case, risks were mitigated properly, and we facing like only things that we are actually accepting, because having some minor issues on production is just basically normal, and we can fix it later, and it doesn't influence anybody. So that's a good example when we do not have like critical issues, when we do not have a lot of client reports about, for example, unavailability of the product, and we do not need to start firefighting around.
From my perspective, just to clarify on that last point, as a don't like hearing as a defects being found in live. However, if they're aesthetic, then as I say, they are definitely within tolerance. As I said, yeah, even minor issues I'm not keen on actually finding, but yeah, I mean those types of things, as I say, they fall through the net. They do, and but they are easily fixable. I say very quickly to resolve. So okay, risk tolerance, very good. An example on my side, a very high level. Talking about, I say, risk management in like enterprise level clients, you have another level of governance where effectively very senior managers are involved in those particular risk issues. And say, in the event that something does actually physically happen, obviously they go up through escalation chains. And the last thing you want to do is be talking with the CEO saying, "Oh, I've got a risk that's just coming to you." You know, you don't want that. But obviously, where you've got governance on enterprise level, things tend to run a little bit more smoothly, and they don't tend to normally get too high up the corresponding chain, because, as I say, they run as I say, quite well, because you've done all the checks and ensured that throughout, as I say, the timeline. In those particular instances, then the risk mitigation strategies kick in as you need to, and there's no need to escalate it up. In my instance, as I say, I did a very large project for 2 years, and thank goodness never had to actually escalate anything up to governance, which is good. And as you said, that's what you want to see, that you're managing it effectively to ensure that, as I say, those types of things don't actually happen. So Okay, all good. Uh, and on the not so good side, as a what's maybe one of the not so nicest things that we've seen, guys? Maybe ladies first. Katerina, do you want to jump in this time?
Sure. Like the worst thing, if we do not do any risk mitigation, we usually have all this risk explodes when we come to release. And also, if we do our testing just doing regular regression testing without taking into account different risk-based strategies that would help us to cover risky areas and find more bugs, probable bugs to happen on production, for example, or right before pushing the code to production. It actually doesn't allow us to cover more areas. So if we do not apply risk-based strategies to our testing, and it's actually very essential to know which risk-based strategy to choose and where to apply to mitigate those risks. So yeah, bad examples is when we do not have like any risk assessment,
Okay,
nor from the company level, nor from the team level, for example, if we are
okay,
talking about
all right.
quality assurance.
Thank you very much. Igor, anything interesting from your side?
Yes, in general, I am agree with Katerina because if we did not set with a good point how mitigation plan and did not think about future risk, it will very bad for us. And about example of first case, I remember a big e-commerce platform that should be released before sale weekend, and our vendor that provide external payment methods and did not notify our team about ASAP updating of the functionality. And um, on the production, this external payment method did not work, and it was very bad because several hours our development team tried to fix this issue, not by ourselves, but with communication with vendors development team, and it was very bad because we had miscommunication with them, and as we understand in future and made a good lesson to invite vendors representatives on
Hmm.
our meetings too, and really make sure that they have a risk assessment too, and everything clear before starting it in production.
Okay. One small example on my side, as a medium-sized level client, did do a risk assessment. Very, very good. As saying, we worked out all the corresponding risks. However, all the risks that were on the client side, one of their particular C-level individuals turned around and said, the probability of that risk is extremely low because I have very high quality level staff on my side. And I said, but what about the impact in the event that it does? And he said, obviously that would be extremely high, but it won't happen because my staff, as they won't make it happen. And of course, when we come through into the reality of the situation arose more than once. Unfortunately, at the start, I did try and see if we could overturn some of those situations because you're treating a medium level to high level risk as a low level risk based on one individual's understanding of their quality of their staff. People are human. You know, unfortunately, these types of situations arise. So you need to treat risks with the respect that they deserve. In the event that it's a high impact, then it's an extremely important risk you need to manage. So, okay. So just a brief one on my side. Okay, I think we've covered off all the areas that we wanted to talk about today. So let's have a quick look and see if we've got any questions from our audience. Okay, looks as though we only have one at the moment. Okay, so question is risk management with regards to stakeholders. Is it the individual is saying they've done it before by utilizing different teams. So they've looked at risks for each of the teams and then brought them all together. Is it better to do it like that, or as a main risk assessment with everybody involved? From my perspective, just as a high level, I personally prefer doing risk assessments collectively because what one person may think may spur another idea from another individual. As such, it may spark more potential risks, which obviously the more risks you identify, the better chance you've got of success in managing them. So that's just personal opinion on my side. So again, let's ask my colleagues here what they think on this one. So Igor, what are your thoughts on this particular area?
Yes, I agree that collectively discussion more productive than by each person. And of course, if we have a lot of stakeholder and decision makers, we could have a big mm, mm, a lot of solution to prevent or mitigate such risk.
There's an argument there that, as say, if you've got lots of people, i.e., you only need to do it once. So if you do it right, then potentially it's good value for money doing it. However, from my perspective, by the same token, do you really need large numbers of stakeholders there, or are they just additional people that are wanting to be involved? Uh, is potentially the risk owner, potential risk owner, coming to the meeting enough? Do they need to bring their deputy when effectively the main person could obviously cover for the collective? So just a thought, I say, with regards to that, with regards to attendees. Katerina, what are your thoughts on this particular question from
I would
our
say
audience?
that it's always good to probably discuss risks within your team, because um, sometimes people can think about various things you have never thought about, and
Mhm.
it's a good source for the ideas and ideas of different risks. So I would say that it takes place to discuss risks and do some short risk assessment within your team, and then bring it up to the general risk assessment session with major
Okay.
stakeholders.
Right. Okay. The only thing I would say there is if the people that did the original team one are represented by one person in the main one, something A may get lost in translation, or B, when they're discussing other risks from other teams, the people that are originally thinking about the risks may think about them slightly differently. I understand your point. From my perspective, I think it's maybe still personally better for me, as say, to do one rather than, let's say, smaller ones and then a big one as a collective. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's okay. Basically, what is right maybe for an organization. Yeah, that may work, let's say, differently. So,
You can try in different ways, as I
yeah,
usually suggest, and find the better approach for your team and for your company.
I completely agree. Yeah, there's no one size fits all. I love that phrase because it's true. You know, it needs to see what works best for you, guys, and that includes our audience as well as part of that. Okay, I think for now that was the only question that we've had from, as I say, the people viewing today. So on that premise, if you've got any additional questions that occur as a follow-up, by all means, please, as a follow-up from this video, and ask, and we'll be only too happy to try and help where we can. For now, I would like to thank my colleagues, Igor and Katerina, for their participation today, and thank our audience for joining us. So thank you very much, and have a good day.